But like, how did you jump from the hip hop to the rock, to the hardcore to then punk rock?
Well, the hardcore one was the jump. I grew up with older brothers who they wore Billabong and Hurley, and they had the big dicky shorts. They skated, loved Blink, man. They absolutely loved Blink, and it just kind of imprinted itself on me. I've been listening to like Boxcar Racer since I was like 6.
Yeah, dude.
It's been there the whole time, and when I started to get the itch to make music, everybody was kind of, my brothers played guitar and I was intimidated by it. I was shy, but to be like point blank, I like attention. And I always had like a fondness for writing. And I was like, well, let me pick the genre of music that has the most words. I have the most opportunity to say something.
Okay.
And it took me a long time to find myself. I put out my first song my freshman year of high school, and I don't think I wrote a good one until my senior year. But I think when I found myself, when I found who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, there was one of the first of many in my life that were like a light bulb going off, a revelation or realization of like, yeah, well, okay, this is what I'm meant to do in some capacity. Yeah. I don't know what capacity, but in some capacity, I'm meant to do this. And so yeah, I mean, I did that. I put out an EP. I started to learn production because I was like, I want to incorporate these elements of, like punk rock and pop punk, especially, that I wanted to incorporate them. And I saw that there were a lot of people doing it, but I could never find anybody who I could gel with on a creative level. So I was like, screw it. I'll learn. I've started to learn guitar a little bit. And just over a 3 or 4 year period, I put the pieces together, and there was a writer's block. And then there was an album that I put out. It was called There's Nothing Wrong With Me. It was a part 1. There was a part 2 later. Mm-hmm. But that was like, that was the bullet, the leaving the barrel, and it had a long way to go. And I've gratefully been through so much over the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm really glad to have come where I am. The hardcore band kind of taught me more about shows. It taught me more about gaining connections, being a part of the scene. I was friends with, I brought him up earlier, Mike in Duckbeak. He had that band, and he was trying to transition from a skate punk band to a more hardcore band, metalcore, like Beartooth. Okay. And Stick to Your Guns and stuff like that. And he needed a bass player for a house show. And I could play guitar at that point. Like, I had started to record stuff and write riffs, and I was like, sure, I'll just play root notes. And I messed up. I messed up 1,000 times, but all just gathering together. Like, I'm sure there was drinking and I'm sure there was some kind of drug usage at that house show. But to be completely honest with you, most people there just wanted to throw themselves at one another and express and sweat and feel. It was so emotive that I was like, I've never done this at a hip hop show. Hip hop shows have such a bad reputation, and maybe other scenes are different. But, Charlotte, I had to cut my teeth in Greensboro, which is an hour and a half away. That was the only scene that really accepted me. And even then there was so many pay to play things. You drive an hour and a half to pay $10 to play 2 songs.
Interesting.
And that is the norm. That is the standard. When I played my first solo show at the Milestone in Charlotte, Laith Ali, who is another journeyman of the Charlotte scene, he's been in a band called It Looks Sad, Yes Chef, so many great indie projects. He was on tour with It Looks Sad, and he forgot that he booked a night at the Milestone. And so I was on a work trip down in Wilmington, North Carolina, down towards the coast, and we had finished early, and he calls me up and he's like, hey man, I know you've been wanting to like play, and I know you do like the hybrid thing. Like, do you want this? And I was like, give me a second. And I went to my boss and I said, hey, we've got 2 work vans. We're done working. Can I go home? I'll drive it home. Just, I need to play this show. And so I did. And speaking of small world, that's where I met Christian.
Dude, that's crazy.
Home for the Day was on that show. Would have never met him if it hadn't been for that coincidence.
Dude, that's funny, man. And obviously, like with hip hop, I mean, are like the themes similar when you were with what you were writing before to what you write now? Is it like the overarching kind of like emotion and theme of the music the same, or have you changed that up quite a bit due to the genre change and kind of the growth you've had in terms of learning how to play shows a little bit more, doing a little bit more into a different realm of music?
Yes and no. I don't think I don't think the change has as much effect on the genre as one might think. I still do write about the same things. I've always thought that introspection and relatability were the two most important components of being a rapper without any sort of confident credibility. And what I mean by that is like I'm not the kind of person that can go around and claim things and have them claim certain things and have them be believable, because I don't believe in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know tons of guys that I'm not even putting them on blast. Like they may be broke or they work day jobs or whatever, but their delivery, the vibe, the aura that they carry when they go up on stage and talk about things that they have that they actually don't, it's like, that's great. Like they have the presence for it, and they're saying those things because it's almost like, what is everybody saying on Twitter nowadays?
Affirmations. Yeah, manifesting it.
It's like their music is like an affirmation or a manifestation. Mine has always been like a diary, so to speak. I've always tried to put experiences, especially when it came to rap and now with Seneca. I've always tried to put experiences to stories. I've always liked allegory and metaphor. There's a character that I've been talking about in music since my early high school days. It's just Alice. I had an infatuation with Alice in Wonderland for a while. And so I just made I humanized my vices and demons, so to speak. Like, so, cause when you're talking about like, oh, I'm drinking, I'm straight edge. I've never drank, but like when you're talking about like, oh, I'm drinking, or, I have, these problems or whatever, when you discuss the problems directly, I don't think it feels like inauthentic or whatever, but sometimes the emotions don't translate because not everybody can relate to that specific thing.
Yeah.
When you manifest it and humanize it, and you're talking to a person, we all can relate to people that have done us wrong.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I do it most of the time. Most of my conflicts in music are with this Alice character. And for the most part, it's a demonization, but it's just looking in the mirror. It's self-criticism. It's me. I am the demonization. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very pretentious.
No, it makes sense because obviously you have to write music that you can look back on and recognize as like a moment in time or a snapshot of something that you've gone through in life, right? Like there's kind of a big part of being successful as a musician, as an artist, I feel, is being someone who shows that vulnerability while also growing and learning from those with each one of those opportunities, right? And it is such an interesting world because the way that music influences people changes by the scene, and that's where like I'm curious with obviously you said that you still write about the same things, but do you feel like it's received differently when it's presented, like with the way that you present it? Because going from hip hop, where it's very much so focused all on the words, then you get to a hardcore where a lot of times, like you said, people are kind of just throwing themselves into each other. It's a little bit more about the whole atmosphere. And then punk, where it's kind of a balance of the two. Do you feel like the delivery changes the way that the like, even though they're the same words, does the delivery like impact those words differently?
Depending on who you are, I think, you know, aside from the voice change, Tom DeLonge sounds like Tom DeLonge,
Mm-hmm.
Projects that he's in, it's like Tom Morello on guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Every band that he's a part of sounds like Rage. It sounds like Audioslave. It's because it's him. I've come to realize the more that I performed over the years that was like, I very much wanted to be Zach De La Rocha. Very much. So no matter how reserved my delivery was in songs, a lot of people always told me, like, I didn't get your music until I saw you live.
Interesting.
There was like, I still do it. There's a fire, when you get in front of people, it's like crank it to 10. All the distortion you can.
Yeah, more cowbell, man. More cowbell.
100%. And so I think in my case, not so much of a different reception because I've always been yelling at the top of my lungs and blowing.
Oh, okay.
Out. Whether it was me trying to scream or me like cutting a wrestling promo with rap lyrics where it's like I'm trying to tell you how I feel in a way that, I only tell people only tell themselves, when you're mad at something and you're pacing in your room and you're getting into it, most times you don't put that out there. And I find that with music and other forms of art like that, like getting the privilege to put those deeper, raw emotions out there in a healthy way. And like that's like I said, it's a privilege. It's super rad, and I'm very grateful that I get to do that.